Welcome to part 3 in this 4-part video series on configuring your rooms and equipment groups for the AutoFlex Connect. If you haven't watched parts 1 and 2, I recommend that you go and do that. There will be links to those videos in the description down below. Without further ado, let's just hop right into part number 3, where we will be talking about sensors. So, like normal, I start off on the home page of my control, and I'm already logged in. We're going to go to the menu and configuration. Once here, we want to begin adding in sensors into our different equipment groups. So, to do that is a little bit different than outputs or pieces of equipment that we are controlling. These are the inputs. So what we will do is we will select our IN4, we will select our input, and then we are going to determine what function this is doing. So for now, let's say that it is a temperature probe. Let's call it outdoor temp, as we have a temperature probe that is outside of the building. And then we are going to assign it to the following groups. So temperature, outdoor temperature, we want to have that in our heating and vent grid for room 1, as well as in our heating mats and our ventilation in room 2. Now, before I go any further, I should note with the temperature function, there are two different columns available. There's the assign column and the control column. So what this means is if you assign a input to a equipment group, that means it is there and available for reference. So that for something like a humidity sensor, you are only going to be able to assign it. You're not going to be able to control the equipment group based off of it. You're only going to be able to assign it, and it'll be there. It'll have a tile on your main page so you can reference what the value is. And then as well, you can set up in the settings secondary modifiers. So you can change the way that your equipment is going to operate in subtle ways based upon this basically a secondary reading. But in general, temperature is the thing that things are going to be controlled off of. It's how it's going to run off of. Because this is a outdoor temperature probe, this we only want it to be assigned and not controlling, because we're going to use it for secondary modifiers. If it's way too hot outside, then we might change the way we do things. Or if it's really cold, then maybe when we open our actuators, then we want to have them open not quite as much if the outdoor temperature probe is reading a very low number, because we're knowing then that opening up those actuators is going to bring in really cold air, so it's going to affect your temperature in your barn to a greater extent than if the outdoor temperature is quite a bit warmer. So that is kind of what the difference between assign and control is. Also, just note here for the different types of temperature probes, it shows you the wiring that you need to do on the IN4 itself, and then also in yellow here it shows you the little jumpers or shunts, what position they need to be in. So let's go ahead and save that one, and things may become a little bit more clear as we continue on here. So let's say room 1 temperature. Let's do if we're using a Dole 114, that is a temperature and humidity sensor, then we will say that it's the temperature side, shows us our wiring. We say room 1 temperature, so we want it to be controlling. So now The reading of this temperature probe is going to be what's controlling our heating and our cooling in room 1. So we'll save that. And then I will save that. Let's just do humidity right away. So room 1 humidity. So the second side of our DOL 114. And so here we only have the option to assign. It's only for reference and for secondary modifiers. We cannot control based off of humidity. The one exception is if right now this is a heating equipment group. If we had created a THI equipment group, that's a temperature humidity index equipment group. If you create one of those, then you will have the option to control for both humidity and for temperature, which makes sense because that is a group specifically created to control based on both temperature and humidity. So that is the one exception. Otherwise, humidity is going to be something that you assign and use either solely for reference or for reference and for adjusting the behavior of things with secondary modifiers. So let's go ahead and save that one. And then let's give ourselves, we'll need to do room 2. So if we do room 2, temperature for DOL, so we will control, and the heat mats have their own internal temperature, so let's have it assign it just for reference. But the heat mats do have a internal temperature sensor that they run off of, which is why we didn't have the control option. Also note, when we have these groups selected, when we're doing the inputs, because it brings up that checkbox, the list where we're selecting which groups the sensors go into, it doesn't actually matter which group we have selected when we are entering in the IN4 terminals and selecting where they are going. But the color scheme still stays the same as far as these 3 inputs are all in both room 1 vent and room 1 heat, and indeed they stay yellow for both. And then we put, this is the outdoor temperature sensor, so we had put that in room 2 as well, and this one was the temperature sensor that we had put into room 2. So that is all staying the same. You just don't really have to worry about what equipment group you have selected because we're going to select it in this menu. So let's go ahead and add a humidity sensor to room 2. So that is good. And then room 2 has heat mats, so maybe there are hogs in there, so let's do a CO2. So here there is the old DOL 19 sensor or the new DOL 119 sensor, and there's both the option for the 10K and the 5K. So we'll say we're using the 10K measuring option, and we will put that into room 2. We'll save. Then room 2 also has lights, so we're gonna say, scroll down here, we have the DOL 16 light, 0 to 1000 lux. We'll assign that into our lights group. So now here, if we go to lights, we can see that one is assigned. And then let's take a look at one other. Why don't we throw an ammonia sensor? into room number 1. And so that is how you assign different sensors into the different equipment groups, and as well a summary of what the difference is between assigning a temperature probe and controlling or denoting a probe or sensor that is assigned to an equipment group versus controlling an equipment group, what the differences are there. And that brings this third video to a close.